10. The last words of Tim Samaras. Tim Samaras and his son Paul Samaras were heard over the highway patrol radio screaming, "We're going to die, we're going to die," just moments before they were killed by the same natural event they had spent their lives dedicated to following, a savage twister. It happened on May 31st, 2013 at approximately 6:23 p.m. in El Reno, Oklahoma. Twisters began forming on an unprecedented scale, and so Tim and his son went out into the country to deploy atmospheric pressure probes. They were also hoping to test infrasound tornado sensors, which were under development at the time. There was Tim in charge, Paul taking photos, and another team member named Carl Young, a meteorologist. They got stuck in a violent wedge tornado with the wind circulating at over 295 miles per hour. All three men were stuck inside their vehicle when it got struck by a sub-vortex, a kind of tornado within the tornado. This would have been deadly in any conditions, but the El Reno tornado of 2013 was a different natural monster altogether. According to the University of Oklahoma, it was 2.6 miles wide. To this day, that makes it the widest tornado ever recorded. Onlookers were shocked by its behemoth proportions, as if the storm could swallow the whole world. Sadly, the three storm chasers weren't the only ones who lost their lives that day. 5 other people perished in the tornado, including a man named Richard Henderson who'd followed the storm for fun to see it develop. 9. The Eye of the Storm. During the Halloween season of 2020, storm chaser Reed Timmer had an extremely close call when he got stuck in the eye of a storm. Reed was out early on a Friday morning chasing a tornado as it took shape over the plains of Nebraska. It was forming just west of McCook, and then suddenly, Reed realized there was no way for him to escape the vortex as it formed right in front of him. To make things truly terrifying, Reed had gotten out of his vehicle and approached the tornado on foot. Totally out of options and with nowhere to go, the meteorologist had no choice but to hide in the center of the tornado. The eye of the storm is the one place where you're safe during one of these events, but it's still not exactly somewhere you want to be. If you so much as scrape the edges of the eye, you can get sucked up in the swirling winds. Alone, with no shelter, and in the eye of the storm, Reed could only hope for the best. He turned his back to the wind and hunkered down as he hoped the storm would clear. Miraculously, he made it out alive. He had the experience of a lifetime, hiding in the core of the tornado and walked away unscathed. Reed wasn't the only one to have a stroke of good luck that weekend either. Over 50 tornadoes swept across Tornado Alley over the late October weekend, over 12 states from Texas to North Dakota. And not a single person was injured, not in any of the tornadoes. 8. The shooting of Bill Merikel. Bill Merikel was a television photographer in 1990 who became the victim of random violence. He'd been part of a television crew shooting severe weather footage when they became the victims of a drive-by shooting. Bill worked for the Oklahoma station KWTV-TV and was out gathering footage with reporter Dave Balute. The pair had stopped at a highway intersection when a vehicle they didn't recognize pulled up across from them, the windows got rolled down, and 2 shots were fired. One shot went through the van and hit Bill in the chest, and the other shot went wide. The reporter wasn't hurt, but the cameraman was left bleeding to death. He was taken to the Lindsay Hospital in critical condition, but there was nothing doctors could do to save him. There were initial rumors that the reporters had stumbled upon a drug deal, but according to McLean County Sheriff Dwayne Anderson, that wasn't the case at all. 4 individuals were later arrested following a brief chase and taken to jail. One of them, a woman named Lorianne Baker, said the shooting was because the weather van's headlights had been too bright and it made her angry. 7. The tragedy of Andy Gabrielson. Andy Gabrielson was the founder of FindTheTornado.com. On February 4, 2012, he died in a devastating car accident after surviving countless encounters with raging storms. Andy's storm chasing footage won a regional Emmy in 2011. He was featured on NBC's Dateline and was interviewed by local news stations. He was something of a celebrity in the storm chasing community. According to Andy, he saw his first tornado when he was only 7 years old, and ever since was extremely fascinated by the weather. For over a decade, between the ages of 14 and 24, Andy chased storms. He'd just journeyed to Texas and spent 2 days chasing storms, never once getting in any kind of trouble, when he was involved in a 4-vehicle pileup. A drunk driver drove into the wrong lane on Oklahoma's Interstate 44 in Sapulpa, pushed his pedal to the floor on the wrong side of the street, and crashed headfirst into oncoming traffic. His vehicle smashed straight into Andy's Chevrolet Tahoe, and Andy died almost instantly. Andy was only 2 weeks away from celebrating his 25th birthday. The crash left his young son without a father and his friends in mourning. 6. The fatal accident of Christopher Phillips. In the spring of 1984, University of Oklahoma meteorology student Christopher Phillips was in hot pursuit of a deadly storm. The storm had already ripped through 2 northeastern Oklahoma towns, Morris and Tilton, and tore them to shreds. Christopher was right on its tail. In the 1980s, it wasn't that uncommon for meteorology students to chase storms as a hobby. It was just something they did for fun. Christopher was 21 years old, a junior from Englewood in New Jersey, and he wanted to get up close and personal with Oklahoma twisters as part of his studies. But on this fateful day, Phillips lost control of his vehicle while driving through Logan County. According to Laura Rustin, a close personal friend who'd been in the vehicle at the time of the accident, she'd gone with Christopher to make sure he was careful, and he was, for the most part. Everything was fine until a rabbit appeared in the roadway and Christopher swerved to avoid the little critter. He could have driven over the rabbit and lived to see another day, but he swerved and sent the car flipping into a ditch. Christopher was killed, Laura suffered minor injuries, and Matt Marshall, who was also in the vehicle, walked away totally fine. And although this was a terrible accident, there wasn't much done to prevent storm chasing after it. Howard Bluestein, the meteorology professor in charge of organizing storm chasing at the school, simply said students were aware of the dangers involved. He admitted there was no way to tell people what to do, and that the students were legally allowed to go chasing storms alone if they wanted to. 5. Kelly Williamson and Randy Yarnell, Storm Wranglers. Kelly Williamson and Randy Yarnell starred in the Weather Channel series Storm Wranglers. They were some of the most high-profile storm chasers around, being filmed speeding down highways in pursuit of twisters and tornadoes. On March 28, 2017, Kelly and Randy were doing a live stream chase of a tornado outside Spur, Texas. Everything started out normally enough, with angry black clouds and the wide open road, but then suddenly, the broadcast went dead. It would come to light later that in the middle of the live stream, the storm chasers had driven through a stop sign and crashed into Corbin Yeager. Corbin was yet another storm chaser for the National Weather Service. Both parties had been chasing the storm, both driving recklessly, and they met at an intersection at the worst possible time. All 3 lost their lives. It was a triple death event, and proof of just how chaotic the roads can be when there are too many storm chasers lusting after disaster. Following the horrible accident, Corbin Yeager's mother filed a federal lawsuit against the Weather Channel for $125 million. However, shortly after, she dismissed the lawsuit, claiming to have resolved all issues with the Weather Channel. It's unclear if she got any money, though it does appear there was some kind of quiet settlement to make everything go away. 4. Struck by lightning. In April of 2022, storm chaser Christopher Risk was pursuing tornadic supercells in Gilmore City, Iowa, when he captured something on camera even more shocking than a tornado ripping a house apart. He didn't realize it at the time, not until he went back and reviewed the footage he'd taken. It was only then that he noticed he'd caught on camera the exact moment a great lightning bolt smashed into his friend's vehicle. In the footage, when slowed way down, the lightning bolt can be seen streaking through the metal shell of the car and sending sparks flying underneath the vehicle. There's even a little puff of smoke. Neither Christopher nor his friend knew that a lightning bolt had hit the car. However, the car did immediately stop working following the bolt of lightning. The person in the car was totally fine, but the vehicle was rendered totally inoperable and had to be towed off the road after the storm had passed. 3. Dale Sharp's freak accident. Dale Sharp was driving along the highway near the Kansas city of Harper late at night in June of 2019 when he experienced a freak accident. Dale was originally from Australia, but was in the United States photographing extreme weather events and chasing storms. It was just after midnight and the road was completely dark. Dale never saw the deer jump out in front of him, not until it was too late and he crashed into the animal. Dale pulled into the ditch as smoke spewed out from the hood of his vehicle. And that was when somebody else came tearing up the road. The other vehicle swerved to avoid crashing into the parked car, but swerved the wrong way and hit David where he stood in the ditch. Paramedics quickly arrived at the scene and rushed David to the hospital, but he was dead by 2 o'clock in the morning. The driver who hit him didn't suffer a single injury. Just hours before the incident, David had been following a tornado across Kansas and sharing the videos on social media. He had escaped the storm only to crash into a deer and then be crashed into himself. He left behind his baby daughter and wife Carly and a thriving photography business. He and his wife and their baby had been traveling the world, pursuing photography and chasing wild weather. 2. Extreme weather chaser Martha Llanos Rodriguez. On May 1st, 2022, a storm chaser was killed in Minnesota during an extreme weather event. Meteorologist Martha Llanos Rodriguez, 30 years old from Mexico City, was chasing a storm when she got rear-ended by a semi-trailer. She was traveling down Interstate 90 when her vehicle came to an abrupt stop because some power lines had gone down and the driver didn't want to drive over them. The driver hit the brakes, they stayed still in the middle of the lane, and the semi-trailer came flying out of the storm at an insane speed. It didn't slow down and plowed straight through the stopped hatchback. In the vehicle were 4 weather experts, but Martha was the only one who lost her life during the crash. She was a writer for the Spanish outlet Meteoret and had been having a busy spring chasing storms across Nebraska and Iowa. Her trip to Minnesota was supposed to be the last of the season. What makes Martha's story so much more tragic is that she was the 4th person in 2022 to be killed while storm chasing. 3 University of Oklahoma students were killed on April 29th after they got into a vehicle accident while chasing a storm. According to Marshall Shepard, the director of the Atmospheric Sciences program at the University of Georgia, there are a lot of storm chasers on the roads. There are so many of these storm chasers that it creates traffic and hazards, and it seems to be leading to more deaths than ever before. 1. Jeff Weir and Hurricane Dennis. In the summer of 2005, Jeff Weir was driving his sedan at an unsafe speed on an extremely wet patch of I-20 near Kilgore, Texas. The day before, Hurricane Dennis had come through and spread destruction everywhere it touched. Jeff had tracked the storm the day before and was now returning to the place where he had intercepted it to presumably take more scientific readings or capture more footage. Tragically for Jeff, he hydroplaned out of the westbound lanes, crashed into the median, and went straight into the path of an oncoming truck. The truck hit Jeff with such immense force that he died instantly upon impact, never even realizing what was happening. It was over so quickly, Jeff wouldn't have had time to react or think, and was gone just as quick as he could blink. In the storm chasing community, his death was considered totally unrelated to storm chasing. It was a terrible accident, the result of too much speed on too wet of a road. But it did happen just hours after he'd torn through the same area in pursuit of a hurricane. Would you rather get stuck in the eye of a hurricane or struck by lightning? Let us know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you soon for more great stuff.